Hello, everyone, and welcome into Betting Life's College Football Extravaganza Week 2. I am your host, Thor Nystrom, joined today by NBC Sports' Eric Froton, the prop king, and our resident coach, Gene Clemons. You can find those two at CF Froton on Twitter and at Gene Clemons on Twitter. Over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be going through our favorite side bets, our favorite total bets, our favorite player prop bets, and everything in between, including getting to all your audience questions. So you can start typing them in the chat, and we'll get to them throughout multiple points on today's show. Only other thing I ask in advance of the show, please click the like button right beneath us. It really helps us get the word out there. And if you find value on today's show, please click subscribe on the channel. Enough with the formalities. Let's get into a packed card today, starting with the game of the day. Gene, we have Michigan down to +7. This thing had gotten up to 7.5. Spoiler alert, that's where I bet the Wolverines. It has come back to 7, probably a fairer number, but where are you at on this game?
It's interesting. When the hook was out there, I was definitely leaning like I got to take the hook, but it's down to 7, and I wouldn't be surprised if before this game goes off, it gets down underneath 7. I think that's just kind of the ebbs and flows of this thing, but I like Texas in this game. I just don't understand how people think Michigan's going to lose their top 6 offensive linemen, right? Their quarterback, their best back, and then come back and all of a sudden be just as good as they were last year. Their coach, right? Like they've got a new defensive coordinator. They've got a new head coach. They kind of have a new philosophy. The quarterback is a journeyman guy who's a walk-on and then came. I don't understand why people think this game is going to be close. I don't actually think it's going to be close. I'm giving that 7. I'm laying it proudly, and if it gets down any further, I might be paying it back up to get it back to 7, so I can get a little bit more juice for my squeeze. I just think this Texas team is just poised to run roughshod all over Michigan.
Froton, this total has come down to 41.5. The game script of this, the market, the sharks in the market are expecting a low-scoring game here. That's going to inform some of our player prop handicaps in this game as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we got a few. And, there's a couple different angles I certainly want to suss out here. One, I was fortunate enough, or she's disfortunate enough, to watch every throw that Davis Warren made against Fresno State. Let me say, in the second half, it became pretty clear that they were sort of abandoning the wide receivers, and it just became the Colston Loveland show. I mean, every positive play they made pretty much in the second half, Colston Loveland was involved, and it just shows how reliant Davis Warren was upon him. I think you see a lot more Alex Orji today. I think they kind of knew they were going to beat Fresno, didn't put out the full kit and caboodle in terms of what they're capable of, and they're going to try to do whatever they can in terms of kind of exploiting the interior of that defensive line. We talked about it week 1. They lose Tavondre Sweat. They lose Byron Murphy, 2 absolutely pivotal interior players, 2 of the best in the country. I think you're going to see a lot of Khalil Mullings. He opened at 45.5 rushing yards, while his compatriot there, Donovan Edwards, up around 55.5. They have since leveled out. They're both right around 51.5. I think Khalil Mullings is a go. He was clearly the more talented and more physical back. They're going to have to get hard yards against Texas. I think that's something that will be factored in. I think that it leads to a Mullings script. And additionally, on the other side, Jadon Blue listed, he's a little bit over. He's right around 68.5. I think he's down to about 65.5 now. I think that you're going to see that rotation with Trey Wisner, Jarrett Gibson, true freshman. I think you see all 3 of them. And against this tough interior Michigan front, I think it's asking a lot of Blue to be able to cross that 68.5 threshold. So I'm taking the under on Jadon Blue rushing. I'm taking the under on Davis Warren. I'm taking the over on Khalil Mullings. And I know that you like Colston Loveland just as much as I do, Thor.
I sure do. Yeah. And just to start with the handicap of the side here, like I mentioned before, I got Michigan at +7.5 earlier this week. And for people out there, you don't need to wait for the Saturday show. We love that you're joining us. You can also check out my bets as I make them on the bet tracker at FantasyLife. There's one of the tabs you can go in there, and then my bets, everyone else's bets at the company, so you can get those lines before they move. Now this thing back to 7. I would still bet Michigan at the 7. My line on this game is my system's line is Texas -4.5. I do expect a low-scoring game on this. I don't know if there's any value left on that total with the market betting it down. But speaking to the props, and Froton and I are on the same page on this. Earlier this week, I got Donovan Edwards under 53.5 rushing yards. I got Mullings over 45.5. Those two, as Froton mentioned, have now become equal. This one's simple. Mullings is better than Edwards. I don't care that Edwards was on the cover of College Football 25 and that he went roughshod off the bench last year against one of the worst Power 5 run defenses in Washington in the national title game. Froton, we've talked about his lack of explosion, Donovan Edwards's, which is not due to a lack of athleticism. It is due to a lack of vision and feel behind the line. He runs into the backs of his offensive linemen all the time. And I think it was, he only had, in the Washington game last year, Edwards had 2 carries of 15-plus yards, 87 breakaway yards. Outside of that, since the beginning of the 2023 season, he's only had 3 other 15-plus yard carries and 61 breakaway yards. So more breakaway yards in that Washington game than in every other one combined since the start of last season. Mullings is the better back. 6'2", 233-pound sledgehammer. He's what's going to get you the efficiency. The Wolverines badly need efficiency in this game. They just need to cloud any offense that they possibly can. The defense speaks for itself on Michigan. It's absolutely nasty. Michigan's the one that has the 2 dominant interior pillars this year, the best in the nation, taking that mantle from Texas. And those two guys inside, it's just so difficult to run on them. I'm on the blue under as well. I got 65.5 earlier, a couple days ago. And then on the Loveland ones too, I'm on Loveland over 3.5 receptions, Loveland over 40.5 receiving yards. Those might have ticked up just a little bit, the receiving yards in particular, but those are the props we're going to be on today. And I do expect more of Alex Orji today. That walk-on quarterback, Warren, not good last week, and you need to manufacture some offense. So that's why there's going to be plenty of balls going to Loveland.
Didn't hit a single 20-yard pass. He threw 4 of them downfield, and they were wayward. Weren't even close. There's no way you can stretch the field down the field. So why wouldn't you just throw in Orji? You as that extra running element. That's how I'm seeing it.
At least with Orji, you get the running element. Yeah, I mean, the Warren kid, he's got a noodle arm, and he's not athletic. So it's a tough way to go through life. Gene, the next game for noon kickoff here, Eastern, Arkansas traveling to Oklahoma State, a pair of teams that beat FCS teams last week. It's just Oklahoma State, the FCS team they beat, was the best team in the FCS, whereas Arkansas, they beat Pine Bluff, one of the 5 worst teams in the FCS. There was a lot of people in Fayetteville that were super excited about the way the offense, the new look Bobby Petrino offense with Talon Green and all the new guys they brought in, how that looked against Arkansas Pine Bluff. That was basically a game against a Division II team. So we're going to see Arkansas, can that offense prove it in this game against Oklahoma State's defense, one of the most returning experience in the entire nation on the Oklahoma State side, on the defensive side of the ball. This line is now up to 9.5. Oklahoma State minus 9.5 live. Gene, where are you going with this one?
Well, I look at it and I try to put it into football terms. Like if Arkansas played South Dakota State,
yeah,
would they be favored to beat South Dakota State? And the answer is yes. Would South Dakota State probably have given them a better game? Probably yes. But Arkansas is still better than South Dakota State, right? And we saw that South Dakota State gave Oklahoma State a run for a while. Like it wasn't like they just ran over South Dakota State. They were giving them a run. I don't think people are making enough about Bobby Petrino back in Arkansas. I think that's the game, right? Like Bobby Petrino knows offense. And when he's not on, riding people around on the motorcycle, he's pretty darn good at putting together offense and scheming for you. I don't know if I think this game hits a double-digit win for Oklahoma State. Like to me, I think this is a touchdown game at most. And if it's a touchdown game at most, I've got to lean with Arkansas and take those 9.5 points, because I think that this offense is going to be imaginative enough to put points on the board that Oklahoma State wasn't expecting. Like good defenses can sometimes get fooled because they're so good and they always do their job, and there's something that kind of like breaks the convention of what your job is within the scheme. And so you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do, but because you did exactly what you're supposed to do, that offensive play takes advantage of that. I can see that happening to Oklahoma State. I don't see this being like a barn burner, like points all over the place. But I think Arkansas can put enough points on the board to keep this number at a single digit. And if that's the case, I'm taking home some money. I'll take Arkansas, and I'm getting those points.
Froton, where are you going at this game, and do you have any props? I saw a crazy number on Ollie Gordon earlier this week. Are you on anything in the prop market?
Yeah, 130.5, I believe, somewhere around there for Ollie Gordon. That's about as high as you're ever going to see for a running back. For a props over, it's sort of a case where, on principle, I have to see the 130.5 yards, obviously against an SEC defense, even though Arkansas wasn't the most stout SEC defense last year. But what do they want to do? Talon Green's in for KJ Jefferson, and you got to remember that defense last year. The Arkansas team, not the most efficient offense. In fact, I would say pretty much not efficient at all. 115th in passing success rate, 103rd in rushing success rate. And when Talon Green comes in, what you get is a mobile quarterback. Obviously there was an element of that to KJ Jefferson, but Green is even more slanted towards his dual threat sort of bona fides. 60% tiled passing grade last year was not particularly good. He is out of Boise State because they really did prefer Maddox Madsen, and the stability of his ability to read and run the offense the way that they want to really pushed Talon Green out. And a 9 to 12 big time throw to turnover worthy play rate, really an issue for me in terms of his passing acumen. And obviously Oklahoma State, while they weren't great last year, certainly, they got 132nd in marginal explosiveness defensively. Like, you could hit big plays on them, but second most experienced team in the nation, and has a seasoned veteran front that has had a lot of time together. So I just think it's a case where you're going to see more running today out of Arkansas, in my opinion. I think they attack the front seven of Oklahoma State. When they have to throw, they will. But top receiver of theirs, it looks like it'll probably end up being what's his name? God, was it Isaac Tesla? Excuse me, Tyrone Broden. Tesla and Broden, whereas Armstrong was their top guy last year, he's injured, and I don't think he's playing. So just a suppressed passing attack. I'm liking that under on 223.5 on Talon Green's passing yardage.
Same. I'm also on the Talon Green under. I think that they, especially, you think about the game script when it's neutral there for Arkansas. Bobby Petrino knows that Talon Green in the past has had very little passing success. You need to establish the run, both with Jackson and then the threat of Green's legs. Hope that you keep the game close, through the halftime and into the second half, and play with Oklahoma State that way. If they have to start throwing early, Arkansas is in real trouble. And so I think the under on Talon's passing for sure. I would also, on principle, be on the Ollie Gordon under. It just feels too high. But my bet on the side of this game earlier this week, I got Oklahoma State minus 7.5. We're up to 9.5 now. We're getting closer. My system's line on this game is Oklahoma State minus 10. So we are getting close there. But if you wanted to nibble, that would be I'd still go with the 9.5. But yeah, the props are maybe where to go in this game now that the line has gotten closer to an objectively fair number. And the Green under and the Gordon under would be two to look into for that. We're going to the next game we got here. I've already tipped it off here. The Cyhawk game, moving to 3:30 Eastern. Cyhawk, baby. Iowa State traveling to Iowa. Line was 2.5 for most of the week. Then it went up to 3.5. It looks like at most books right now, it is back to Iowa minus 3. Gene, where are you going in that game?
I think in this game, obviously, pride matters. Like we were talking about before the show started. What else are they doing in Iowa? This is the talking point. This is, they're drinking, but they're also talking about this game. And I think when it comes down to it, like, throw everything out the window. Iowa's just a better team than Iowa State is. And in games this close, if you're going to pick on the spread, you've got to pick the team that's better. Iowa's the home team. We know in betting normally, especially when you're talking about professional, the home is usually good for 3 points. So if I'm looking at just from the home perspective, I like Iowa. They're just a better team, I like Iowa. Do I think they're better coached? Yes, I like Iowa. there's no place on here that I go, oh my gosh, Iowa State is just like better than what Iowa is. And Iowa just finds a way to win games. Like they're rarely ever horrible. They find a way to win games. Iowa State over their their relevance, they found ways to lose games. So it's like when I'm just thinking about this as just a coach looking at like the way these two teams break down, Iowa is just going to come in. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're not going to beat themselves. Iowa State's going to come in, do what they do, but they might beat themselves. And so I'll take Iowa. I'll lay the 3. I'll hold my nose because these games always give me a little bit of anxiety, and then sit back with a frosty beverage and enjoy it.
Froton, with this line, about 3 in the market right now, and then this total looks like we're down to 35.5 in the market right now. Any leans on either of those, or do you have any player prop bets on this game?
Yeah, well, in terms of a lean, I think we get a competitive game. Most of these games are pretty competitive, if I'm not mistaken, Thor. I mean, that seems to be the nature of Iowa and Iowa State. But with Iowa, too, I mean, what do you want? 9th in returning production from an absolute wrecking crew defense. 1st in EPA per play, 2nd in points per drive, 5th in success rate allowed. I mean, 15 points per game. On offense, though. Had to bring in Tim Lester from Western Michigan. Cade McNamara looked more competent. He looked pretty good. We know that he can game manage. But 132nd in success rate, 133rd in efficiency. I mean, this is, you look at everything. The only thing that they really had to their advantage as an offense was they started at the 32-yard line every drive, and they had a short field to work with in a lot of cases. But with Iowa State, I do think that maybe, your Iowa love is kind of clouding the potential of Iowa State. Rocco Becht, 20 of 26, 267 yards, 2 touchdowns against a decent North Dakota team that nobody wants to play. And offensively last year, 2nd in ISO PPP, 2nd in marginal explosiveness, but not particularly efficient. Iowa State, 107th in success rate. But they have 5 returning starters on the line, veteran line. Last time they did that, they challenged for the Big 12 championship with Matt Campbell. Talk about coaching. Matt Campbell is as good as it gets for a non-power 4, elite institution coach. He hasn't left Iowa State, and defensively, 18th ranked S&P Plus defense last year. 9 returning starters, 3.8 yards per rush, 56% completion rate. Like, this is a good defense too. Can Iowa move the ball on Iowa State as well? I think Iowa State can actually do something. I think they can move the ball a little bit. I think they're good enough, Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, to be able to do that. And I'm backing the over 35.5 rushing yards for Abu Sama. He is their clear, defined number 1. They gave a few carries away last game because they were in control of North Dakota, but you're going to see a full, steady diet. I think he probably gets 12 to 15 carries, and at 35.5 rushing yards, you're not asking for the world here. I think he does enough to clear that line. I'm taking Abu Sama's over, and I actually like Iowa State. Give me the 3 points.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you on that one. On Iowa here, of course. My system, though, got a line on this one of Iowa minus 5.8, and that was with the teams at full strength, which I'll get back to in a minute. The total, my system's total on this game is 37.6. I hate to almost say this, but I would lean the over on the total. I haven't bet that yet. I don't know if I have the guts. We'll see if I can get there by game time, but I think that's where I go. The prop lines in this game and the total, they seem to be nodding back to last year's Iowa offense run by our boy Deacon Hill, and not Big Deke, and the one that was coordinated by that dope Brian Ferentz, that nepotism dope. Now you've got Tim Lester in. They're playing different style of offense in Iowa, and it looks like Cade McNamara, for the first time in years, is healthy. The first quarter of last week's Iowa game against Illinois State, McNamara looked like the injured McNamara, or some amalgamation of Deacon Hill's passing effectiveness. After that, though, he was good the rest of the game, and they were running Tim Lester's system, the one we saw put up points at Western Michigan. McNamara in that game ended 21 of 31 for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns. But the split of it, I thought, was really interesting. McNamara went 3 for 8 for 17 yards in the first quarter of that game. That's when he looked terrible. Then he goes 5 for 9 for 57 yards in the second quarter. Then he comes out and completes his first 8 passes of the third quarter with multiple touchdown passes during that. It's like the offense picked up there, and they started to coalesce a little bit into Lester's system, where they're going to actually try to score points. I mean, the lack of offensive points is the reason that Kirk Ferentz's son got pushed out of town. It seems like they've learned their lesson in that regard. And speaking to the props in this game, there's a few different ones I like. Luke Lachey, they set him way too low. It's another thing, like Lachey and Colston Loveland, it's sort of the same thing where they're the best offensive players on each team. So you're going to force the ball to them. And that's what we've seen with Lachey ever since, the beginning of last year when he's been healthy. So he's had 3 complete 4-quarter healthy games since the start of last season. During those 3 games, he's seen 23 targets. That's an average of 7.7 per game. And they're giving us a receiving total in this game. Well, it was before in the mid-30s. That might have ticked up into the low 40s. I don't care. I'm going over. Same thing I'm with Colston Loveland's. And then with McNamara's passing, it's at 165.5. I'm going over on that thing too. Again, we're in a different offense here. These lines are being molded by the perception of the Brian Ferentz Deacon Hill offense. And speaking to Iowa State's defense, which it did have a lot of returning production, it was good last year, etc. They're not at full strength. Iowa State's without 2 starting linebackers in this game. Caleb Bacon, the guy who had that viral ad campaign last year with the NIL, where it was like eat more bacon, yeah. And then Will McLaughlin is also out. In addition to that, one of Iowa State's top backup linebackers, Cale Brazina, a younger kid, he's questionable after missing last week. So Iowa State's linebacker core is decimated. I feel that matters against an Iowa team that looks to establish the run. Even with Lester, I mean, Lester did that at Western Michigan. It was run to set up the one-on-one deep shots downfield. Iowa's offense is getting back Caleb Brown in this game, their top wide receiver who missed last week. Other thing on the Iowa State side is they are down, I believe, to their 4th-string right tackle already. We'll see how that goes against an absolutely nasty Iowa defensive front, and a nasty Iowa defense overall. So my plays on this game are Iowa -2.5, and then the Luke Lachey over receiving yards. The lines that I've mentioned, as far as my lines, my systems totals, I don't know if people realize this because I just came to FantasyLife, but you can actually get all those on FantasyLife under the Tier 2 subscription. There's all these betting tools that, and on Mondays they update the projected conference standings and the overall win total for every team. So future bettors can go in there and see, based on last week results getting plugged in, and then the new win expectancies, because they change every week depending on the power ratings and stuff, the projected spreads. You can go in there and see all that stuff. It'll help make you a better bettor. You can actually get that today for if you type in Thor 20 on the little code thing, you get 20% off. And I think it's only $100. I think it's only $100 like total. So it's $80 or whatever. Anyway, on to the next game. Gene, this is the last afternoon game we're going to talk about here. And sort of an interesting one. We have the new ACC team, California, traveling across the country to Auburn. Auburn, another SEC team that their fan base believes that the offense has been turned around because they annihilated one of the worst FCS teams last week. This line earlier in the week was Auburn -13.5. I made a bet at that point. It is now down to Auburn -10.5 live. It seems like we have late money coming in on the Cal Bears. Where would you go in this game, Gene, at that current line?
Yeah, I'm looking. I've been looking at it, and I do like what Auburn is doing offensively. I think you have to always hedge your bets when you're playing like really bad teams or just teams that you're just much better than. I do like this Auburn offense. I think they have weapons. I think they actually have depth at quarterback, which is weird. But I also was like, when that line first came open, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not laying that type of money for that type of spread without knowing what they can do, going forward. Now, I do believe in what they're doing there because I do believe that this coach understands how to coach, right? Like I think he knows what he's doing. We've seen him, get things popping in other places. My problem with Cal is that Cal just never looks like, it's not like they look inept, but they just never look utterly impressive to me. And so I don't like the travel. I don't like, this early morning game. It's going to be, early morning for them because they're coming from, from the West Coast. I don't like the environment. I don't think Cal has seen environments like this environment that they're going to have to go into with Auburn in a while. The spread is still, for me, a little bit healthy at 10.5. But if I had to lean one way, I'd probably lean towards Auburn. This isn't a game, if I'm being honest, this isn't a game that I would put my money on. But if I was to give someone the lean would be Auburn. I think they have the ability to run the ball better. I think they have a more explosive element through the passing game than California does. I don't think California has a defensive backfield to be able to hang with those outside receivers, and especially those guys in the slot. I think that'll be where the X factor happens on offense. If they can get the running game working early, I see them having a hard time trying to decipher what's coming next. This could be a game that covers late. Auburn up by 7, up by 10, and then gets a late field goal or a late turnover to push it over the number. That's not the way I like to live my life when I'm doing when I'm putting my money down. But if I was leaning, I'm definitely leaning Auburn on here. I just think they're a better football team right now. And I think all the cards are kind of stacked against California to make this travel happen and come in and get a W.
Froton, with the line coming down to where it is now, that live of 10.5, where would you go in this game? And is there any props that you're looking at? One thing I should mention on that is Jaden Ott, the star running back for Cal, was listed as probable all week. This morning we have a story that he's trending towards playing. There hasn't been any indication that he won't be, so it looks like we're going to get Jaden Ott in that game. Froton, where are you going with this game and any props?
Yeah, it's imperative that Jaden Ott plays for any potential for Cal to move the ball. And it's not that they were bad last year. It's just they play quick, 16th in terms of pace. Scored 31.5 points per game last year, which is great. That's certainly where they want to be. But look, defensively, they were brutal. And this is a Justin Wilcox, their head coach. He's a defensive guy. I can't imagine he'd want to see that again because they gave up 34 a game. They were 115th nationwide at 133 teams in terms of points allowed. And then talent-wise, too. You got to remember, Cal, traveling across the country, as Gene astutely pointed out, but talent-wise, their 247 talent rating ranks 51st in the country. On the other side, Auburn ranks 14th. And this is year 2 of Hugh Freeze. And remember what he did when he was at Ole Miss. Hugh Freeze lit up the SEC. And now, year 2, Peyton Thorne, even though they were playing, obviously, an FCS team, put up 51 fantasy points last week. Looked incredible. We know he can run, has true dual threat ability. And now they have Perry Thompson. Now they have Cam Coleman, 2 premier freshman wide receivers that were playing. They showed out during the spring. A lot of talk about him all summer as far as Cam Coleman being a true X in the SEC and potentially a first-round draft pick. He's getting that kind of buzz. I just think you have a lot of things going the way of Auburn, in terms of the steam. And on the other side, Cal is going the opposite direction. If Jaden Ott is compromised, this is bad news. I don't have a real props lean on this. There isn't a lot that's particularly appealing to me that's out there right now. I think, you can maybe take a look at that over on Peyton Thorne's, rushing yardage. But I'm leaning heavily Auburn. I don't think Cal can hang with this new look year 2 Hugh Freeze offense.
Yeah, so I tease this, but I took the 13.5 with Cal earlier this week. With it being down to 10.5, that's a no play for me. My system's line in that game is Auburn minus 11.4. The market zapped the value on that for me, so I would probably pass. Total on this game 53.5. My system's total 55. We're right on the margins there. In the prop market, I think, Froton, the reason it's hard in this game is you had the odd status up in the air. What is he going to be 100%? Is he going to be 90%? I assumed he was going to play all week because it was just probable the designation there. But what percentage of odd are we going to get? And then on the Auburn side, we've only seen that passing attack with the much better receiving core against that horrid opponent last week. And now they play a legitimate FBS Power 4 opponent. What are we going to see there for the yardage? It's a lot of things that are up in the air. So I just think that the value's been zapped out of that thing. So I'm gonna pass on that, betting that one. Guys, we're going to open up the mailbag now. We will get back to more questions later on after we get through our first batch here. So keep typing your questions in down below in the chat, and we will get to them later on in the show. But our first batch, opening up the mailbag today, our friend Mike Huseman asks us, Ohio is a 1.5-point home underdog against South Alabama. What do you guys think about that one? I'll kick this one off. I actually have a couple bets in this game. I think this is going to be one of the funnest games of the day. I think the wrong team is favored. I think that Ohio should be the very small favorite, that line should be toggled. So I have a bet on the Bobcats. I nibbled on their money line as well. I'm also on the over of this game. The line where it has been set, that total earlier this week, it was 56.5 when I hit it. I'm not sure where it is live, but where it was at that point, you're nodding back again to last year and not recognizing the new circumstances. Kane Womack at South Alabama, he leaves to become the defensive coordinator at Alabama. Major Applewhite takes over. Entirely different leaning. Womack, obviously a defensive coach, and Major Applewhite is an offensive coach. That they had to replace most of their starting lineup. I believe they only had 7 guys returning that started in the FBS last year. The South Alabama team this year runs at hyper tempo and is looking to put points on the board. They are actively looking to get into shootouts. Their defense has regressed greatly, both the coaching and the personnel on hand there at South Alabama. It's a totally different team. In fact, last week, South Alabama ran at the fastest adjusted tempo in the entire FBS of any team that was playing. And obviously a lot of points and a lot of yards were put up in that game. And then Ohio, they're with Albin there. They have a new look offense as well. They lost a lot of pieces, but they still run the ball effectively. They ran for over 200 yards last week on the road against a P4 opponent, Syracuse, and they were running at a top 25 adjusted tempo Ohio last week. So it's not like the meander back to the line Frank Solich offense. Albin's picked up the pace there between the tempo of that game, between the offenses that we have, between the defensive regression. We're going to get a shootout here. I like the over. I also like Ohio. Of course, I've taken the money line and parlayed it with the over as well. Did you guys have any thoughts or any bets on this game?
Yeah, I certainly do. And I knew where you were going as soon as this came up, because I know your feelings about South Alabama. And you make a good point, especially with Ohio. Keep in mind, this was a top 15 defense last year for Ohio. They turn over a lot. And I think that's really why we're seeing the improved pace out of Tim Albin, because he's realizing he doesn't have the defense he did. He's only got 35.5% of their returning production coming back from that defense. Things have to happen. With South Alabama, remember, they played North Texas last week. They were actually somewhat in control of that game, had an 87% post-game win expectancy, but they just didn't execute down the stretch, made some boneheaded plays. And that kind of goes back to the first time that Major Applewhite is running his own show. Kane Womack's at Alabama now. It's his show. And again, with Ohio, Tim Albin, just a seasoned coach, was under the Frank Solich tree, took over when Solich left. I agree. I'm on Ohio.
The next question we got here, Alex LeMay asks us, how do you guys feel about Kentucky minus 8.5 today? Hosting South Carolina. South Carolina, their offense with the new quarterback, Sellers, didn't look good last week against Old Dominion. And they have, the thing is, South Carolina has weapons. Like last year, it was Xavier Legette and then Pray for Rain. But they got Jared Brown, they got Larvadian, and they have the freak, Nick Harbor, returning. And they brought him Rocket Sanders, too. Do you guys think South Carolina's offense can turn this thing around at least enough to stay within single digits at Kentucky in this game?
No, I think that the one thing we know about Kentucky is that they're always going to be a formidable defensive team. And they're licking their chops at this South Carolina offense right now. Like, that's what you did versus ODU. Watch this. Kentucky has invested heavily in defense and making sure that their defense rises to the level of an SEC team. That has been their mantra ever since the regime took over there, and that's what they've hung their hat on. Really good defense, or trying to play really good defense with high-level defensive players and a running game that we're just going to keep bludgeoning you. I think that Kentucky, as they continue to evolve offensively, They still hold that defense. They have multiple 4-star and 5-star dudes all over the defense that they've been able to recruit over the years. Their defensive line might be the deepest I've seen it in a while. The 2 deep, all formidable. I think that this is one of those games where it looks like it's going to be close, and then there's a turnover, and then there's another turnover, and all of a sudden you look up, and Kentucky's going to be up by 14 points, and you're going to be like, well, their offense didn't look that great, and it's because that defense is able to keep everything in check, and then the offense will get rolling because now they can play with some confidence. They can play with some ease. I think this is a game that's just a bad matchup for South Carolina, and I think it's one where Kentucky will look to kind of make a statement. Hey, we're going to be in the mix for this college football playoff if things can roll our way.
Froton, the prop that I'm interested in that game, Lenoris Peter Sellers set in the high 160s for passing yardage. Your only concern there is the game script immediately flipping the other way, and then they pass every single down, and then maybe he gets over just on volume. But boy, did he look bad last week as a passer against not a good defense in Old Dominion. Are you thinking the under on that game, or do you have any other props in this game?
I'm still thinking about the Peter Sellers reference, and I appreciate it. As a Stanley Kubrick fan, I appreciate Peter Sellers. For those of you out there, how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb, watch it. Kubrick classic. Peter Sellers, a genius. That being said, Lenoris, not so much. Not so much. As discussed, Old Dominion last week, not known, Ricky Ronnie, all the respect to the head coach, but not known for their defensive prowess. He could not throw a forward pass. I watched every single pass he threw in that game. And let's just say, I think we're going to see a lot more running the ball this week. I don't understand how you're going to clear 170. They're going to need something to happen. On the other side, South Carolina, again, watch that game. You know what I really like about South Carolina? I like their edge rusher. Please, Dylan Edwards is his name.
Freak. Yeah, freak.
Oh, my
That guy's
God.
ridiculous.
Everybody, you need to watch him.
He was making people look like high schoolers, the tackles. Like, there was somewhere he didn't even get touched. That was crazy.
Guys, he's unreal. I think he has legit first-round talent. It's Dylan Stewart, excuse me, not Dylan Edwards. Dylan Stewart. I think he has legitimate first-round potential. He looks like a cobra out there where he moves. First snap of the game against the Old Dominion left tackle, he gives like a little shoulder shake, J.J. Watt style, and then just says, no, I'm not going around you, goes right up in his kitchen, pushes him 10 yards back, throws him into the quarterback. I was like, oh, my God. Oh, my God, what are we looking at here with Dylan Stewart? So I'm concerned about – he's going to be bringing havoc into that backfield. I'm concerned about what we see out of Vandegrift. Keep in mind, this is Brock Vandegrift. He doesn't have any sort of a track record for us to fall on as well. So with an extremely veteran defense there as well for Kentucky, they have a phenomenal defensive front. I don't think Lenoris Sellers is, from what I saw, unless he makes real leaps, I don't think he's going to be able to clear that 169.5. I like that under.
The next question we have, I'll handle this one. Austin Rokas asks us, how are we feeling about the G5 college football selection? My thoughts on this week on the market to make the playoff with the G5 teams is to wait until next week if you like Boise State, because we're going to talk about that game in a second, but I think Boise State's going to get throttled against Oregon. You'll get better odds on them next week if you want it. But if you like Texas State, as I did in the preseason and still do, they had a weird game last week against Lamar. They did win it. Now is the time to bet Texas State. If you think that they're going to beat UTSA on their home field in a coin flip game today, if that happens, Texas State's odds are coming down. So now would be the time to buy on them. Memphis would be another team to toss out. Their schedule looked harder in the preseason because the sure loss that everyone put on it was next week in Tallahassee against their former head coach, which is not looking as quite of a hard of a game right now. In fact, it looks like anyone could go into Tallahassee and beat them. So another one to look at potentially, Memphis there. Last one, and then we're going to get back into our bigger handicaps, and keep typing the questions because at the end of the show, we're going to get through all the rest of them. So any question you got on the card. Well, B asks us, Kansas State against Tulane. Do you think K-State covers, and are there any props that you're interested in? Froton, you got any props on K-State and Tulane? I know that I got one on the under passing yardage or Mr. Avery Johnson. What about you?
Yeah, I do have one, and it's another under, as you discussed. It's Mekhi Hughes, 76.5 rushing yards. I think that's probably good down to 70.5. With last year, obviously this Tulane team under Coach Willie Fritz, who is just running it slow, playing slow, methodical, and just looking to march. And Mekhi Hughes certainly thrived under that system. However, in comes John Summerall and that Troy offense. If it's anything that Troy did, sure, you had, our friend and Mr. San Diego Chargers, Kamani Vidal, was there last year. But for a lot of the time, keep in mind, this Tulane team, they throw the ball a lot. That Gunnar Watson, just the short precision, quick hit passing attack, a lot of 0 to 10 yard throws, trying to spread it out and exploit the interior. I think against a Kansas State front, it's going to be hard for Tulane to just simply assert themselves on the line in that way. I think they're going to have to be a lot more creative. Running the ball up the gut with Mekhi Hughes is a difficult proposition. And I think you're going to see Kansas be able to control the line of scrimmage in a way against a retooling Tulane team that I wouldn't look at in the same manner if this is 2023. So I just think script-wise, they're going to be behind, and they're not going to have the luxury of just pounding Mekhi Hughes 20 times. I think they're going to have to adjust with Darian Mensah, who had a pretty nice game last game, to his credit. But again, this is Kansas State, so I'm liking the under for Mekhi Hughes.
This game opened at 10.5. We're down to 8.5. Interestingly enough, my system's line in this game is 9.5. So we've gone down beneath that. I'm staying away from the side of this game. I think it's a good prop game. Froton just tossed one out. I liked the Avery Johnson under on the passing, but you could potentially even look at the over on his rushing. They say he's the fastest kid on the team in Manhattan, and he certainly looks a very, very skilled runner. Guys,
Absolutely.
we're gonna get back into the big game handicaps now, but keep putting your questions down there in the chat. Later on, at the end of the show, about 40 minutes or so, we'll get to the rest of them. So anything you got on today's card. Gene, moving to 6:30. So now our 6:30 Central, our evening games. This is a 7:30 Eastern kick. Tennessee traveling to North Carolina State. This was another one where it was like 7.5 the early part of the week, and now late in the week here, it is toggled up. Very similar to Arkansas and Oklahoma State, the way that line movement progression has gone, where now Tennessee is up to a 9.5 point favorite as we're on game day here. Any thoughts on this one, Gene, and which way would you go on that one?
Well, obviously, I was on Tennessee early, especially when the line was there. I'm not surprised to see this line move up. I think that what we saw from NC State last week is concerning with how they were not able to really put away on Western Carolina. Western Carolina is a team that their coach likes to spread the ball around and get the ball to different people. Now you're going to bring in Tennessee, who I'm about to, I'm just going to call him Nico because I am Lieva. I am a
Nico's fine.
yeah. I'm messing that up.
Everyone knows Nico now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It ain't just you.
No, listen. I think that Nico is the best of they've had some really talented dudes come in there. I think he has the best combination of the ability to throw the ball and the ability to escape and get out of there and do some things with his legs. He can see over everybody because he's 6'6". He's got all the confidence in the world. The upside is great, and he is with the perfect offense and the perfect coach for him to be able to thrive. If you look at this, I can tell you, for me, the spread is great. I like Tennessee to cover. I'll just tell you that off the rip. But I also like the over. I'm stacking these things because Tennessee will give you some points, right? Tennessee will let you get a few points on them, but they're going to put up all the points in the world. They don't like to take their foot off the gas. That's one of the things I really like about this team. If you look at last year, I would compare NC State very similar to some of the ACC opponents that Tennessee played last year and was able to put up a lot of points, but then gave up some points too as well. And I think that this is one of those games like a Virginia of last year where Tennessee comes out, strikes fast, gets a little complacent, gives up a touchdown here, gives up a touchdown there, strikes fast, and then all of a sudden you look up and it's a 49 to 20 to 21 game, whatever that machination, or a 49 to 14 game. I think that the 60 points on the over under, or the 61, I think it might be up to 61 right now.
It's actually at 59 and a half or 60 in the market, but you're going over that one, Gene?
I think the over is one in there because Tennessee is going to come out and score. NC State has an offense that can score, but they also have a defense that's going to give up some points. And I just think this is one of those ones where Tennessee is able to put together a few scores in a row. That's going to break the floodgates open, and then it's just going to become a track meet. And North Carolina State's not going to be able to beat Tennessee in a track meet.
Froton, with the line up to 9.5 and the low 60 for the total. Where are you at on this one, and any player prop angles?
Yeah, definitely got a couple player prop angles with NC State. Offensively, they had a hard time last year. 106 in rush success rate, 90th in pass success rate. But that's why they brought in Grayson McCall and Jordan Waters, and Noah Rogers from Ohio State. Top 10 recruit last year. So they're clearly trying to address that offense. But defensively, 5 returning starters, and that defensive front, that front seven, it was excellent last year. They lose a lot, including superstar Peyton Wilson, who was the heart and soul of that defense, and they were ranked 17th overall in S&P Plus last year. So sacks per dropback, 31st, pretty darn good. What they did well, pass defense. They were 5th in interception rate, 8th in QBR allowed. What they didn't do well, defending the run, 114th in rushing explosiveness. Now, they're playing Tennessee, where last year, Josh Heupel had to dummy down this offense. They had Joe Milton there, right? This was a high-flying 40-point offense with Hendon Hooker running the show. Joe Milton comes in, and clearly this was a different offense. Went still good, 25th in success rate, 23rd in explosiveness, but just not the consistency, and didn't finish drives. A 50% red zone TD rate. That was 118th in the country, right? What I think you're going to see from Tennessee is, as you mentioned, Nico Iamaleava is one of the true premier athletes at the position in all of college football. You watch his volleyball stuff. You watch his ability to move. He's so fluid. Rushed 3 times to 33 yards last game. Didn't have to do anything. He can run as many times. He can run for as far as he wants. 31.5 rush yards. He didn't have to do it as much against Iowa in the bowl. Only ran 3 times. You're going to see him run 10 times, and he's going to go over 50 yards. I like the latter. I think he's going to crush the interior of this soft front seven that's turning over. I also like Dylan Sampson. He was at 67.5. I think he's probably around 70 now. I think that's still fine. I think they're going to bludgeon them on the ground, and that Tennessee is going to go after this weak front seven of NC State.
I'll move on quick. You guys took all my time talking, but I no bet for me on the side of this game. The only prop that I took was the over on Jordan Waters' rushing, because they had to go to him in the second half last week in order to generate any offense. NC State did the running back there. Guys, we got to go quicker here. Colorado traveling to Nebraska. This line is now down to 6.5 in the marketplace. The total on this one, 55.5 or so live. Gene, who do you like in this one quick?
Yeah, I think I definitely like the over because – can you hear me? Yep. I think I definitely like the over in this game. I think Colorado is going to put up points. Nebraska is going to be better than they were last year. I think for me, though, the difference is does a quarterback make you 22 points better than you were last year versus this team? I don't believe so. I don't know what the hype is over Nebraska. So I will take the points with the Buffaloes, and I'll stack it with the over in this game.
Parlay action. Froton, you. What do you think?
Yeah, with Colorado. Hey, this is Colorado. 23 rushes for 59 rushing yards last game and 445 passing yards. I mean, that is the Buffaloes in a nutshell. They only ran for 824 yards last season and succeeded. This is almost impossible. Succeeded in just 3.2% of power situations last year, Colorado. Brutal run game. That being said, their defense, very giving. Allowed 449 Total yards last game, 7 of 13 third downs. I mean, I don't know what they're doing here against FCS team, but just terribly inefficient. With Nebraska, if there's a play I like, Dylan Raiola listed at 11.5 rushing yards. A gift from the heavens. If you can find it, take it. There's still up, if you can't get that on Underdog, there's 9.5 rushing yards as his long rush. Take that under as well. Watch the entire game. Watch every single throw from Dylan Raiola.
He didn't in high school. He didn't last. But
he didn't leave the pocket. He's 260 pounds. He's an offensive lineman with a cannon on his shoulder. Let me personally show you every single throw I watched, every roll, everything. Even when he's rolling out and they're moving the pocket, he's taking little chop steps and he's looking downfield. There is no run in his game. He did not even think about leaving the pocket. 0 rushes for Dylan Raiola last game. Take the under in his rushing yards anywhere I can get it. The 9.5 long rush is great. If you can get 11.5 total, eat it alive.
Yeah, the books are gonna stop offering that one soon. We at least got one more. That kid doesn't run. That's been the book on him since high school. Like, again, he has that howitzer of an arm. That's where his talent is. He is looking to stay back there. Even when there's a lane in front of him, he's using it, buying time. Can we hit someone? Because he can hit someone 3 sections down the field on the other side of the field. He ain't running at all. I love those calls. My system's line in this game is Nebraska minus 4.9. So I'd be with Gene and lean Colorado's way. It's not a play for me yet. I haven't pulled the trigger on this. Maybe later in the day I can get there. My system right on that total, and literally 55.6 is where my system's at on that total. So I'm going to stay away from that. In the prop market, the Raiola stuff is great on the rushing, the unders on that. I also earlier this week just nibbled on the Shadir Sanders over right when it came out. It's 305, I think. It might be up a little bit right now.
It is, yeah. It's up to over 310. It's open to 303.
Okay, yeah. So
I saw 315 in a couple places, so it's coming.
Yeah. The Froton said it. They don't run. They don't run. They literally don't run, and they have 4 NFL wide receivers with a top 10 overall potential quarterback there. So, I mean, like, that's what it is. They're going to pass. Once again, might get there on usage alone. I know that Nebraska has a good defense. Next game, guys, I teased this one earlier. Oregon hosting Boise State. The line here, it had gone up, I think, to 20 at one point this week. It is now, the last I saw, Oregon moving down to 19.5. Gene, tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern time in Eugene. Who do you like in that game?
I think Oregon will win. I don't particularly like the spread because I just don't like what I saw out of Oregon the last time I saw them play. Now I think they will be much better this week than they were last week because that's what happens. You know, you come out, you lay an egg, you go back, you fix some things. For me, if I'm just going off of the eye test and what I saw last week versus what I think I might see this week, I've got to take points. Because that Oregon offense did not look like it didn't look like anything I thought it was going to look like. Dylan Gabriel's 175 years old. He's still playing college football. Like, you've got to be better than that. So for me, I'll just take Boise State with these points if I'm going to do anything and go from there.
Froton looks like a game script that could flip here early with the spread being what it is. We'll see how game Boise can be. But, of course, that affects the prop handicapping and how you do that with the individual player props. Any angles on that, and do you like a side in this game?
Yeah, this game is somewhat reminiscent of last year where Oregon early in the season played Texas Tech, and Texas Tech gave them a very spirited run. It was a 38-30 game. And it sort of gave Oregon that wake-up call to say, all right, hey, listen, you can't get away with some of this stuff. Time to dial in. And I feel like that's kind of what happened here at Idaho. And if you remember last year, once they had that Texas Tech game, the next 3 games Oregon had, they scored 139 points and allowed 22. So they went full warpath as soon as they had that little scare last year. I think we're going to see the same sort of a thing against Boise. Boise didn't look great either. Let's keep that in mind. Yeah, Ashton Genty did, but there were definitely chinks in the armor we saw with that Boise State team. I think we get angry Oregon today. Dylan Gabriel threw for 380 yards. They definitely didn't convert. Run game certainly could have been better, especially Winnington, 33 yards on 14 carries. But I think we see angry Oregon, and I cannot take Boise because of that spot.
It's a weird handicap with Gabriel's passing yardage because I think Boise State's secondary is trash. We talked about that last week, and then the new quarterback at Georgia Southern, J.C. French, our boy, he passed all over him. And now you're facing Oregon's outside the perimeter talent there. You got Tez in the slot. Gabriel hit Tez 12 times last week. They had 12, whatever. And Gabriel put up those ridiculous passing yards. It wasn't converted into a ton of points. They only scored 24 against Idaho. One of the reasons this line's been suppressed a little bit, my system's line on this game is Oregon minus 23.8, basically minus 24. I bet Oregon earlier this week, I think at 18.5. Right now, it's right around there. So I guess I'd still advocate for a play on that. But when you think about some of those player props, you get into the second half, we might see an early hook for a couple of those guys. That's the only reason I haven't bet the Gabriel one, because they potentially, if the game goes like I agree with you, Froton. I think this is ticked off Oregon. They got some crap in the media for only beating Idaho, FCS Idaho by 10 points last week. So it's just hard to know. Like, the better they play, the earlier those starters could potentially get yanked, maybe not play the fourth quarter. So I stayed away from a lot of them. I think you had a play or two in the props on this game, though, right? Froton?
Yeah, for Oregon and Boise State.
Yeah, because you went under on Caples, right?
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm sorry, Thor. I had forgotten Latrell Caples even existed. 47.5 receiving yards. He didn't play last week. Like, what's going on here? What are we doing with Latrell Caples? We don't know what we're getting out of this. Oregon's pass defense. I mean, look, I understand they're probably going to be in a throwing script, but out of principle, and this is finally getting out of principle out of me. Under on Latrell Caples, 47.5 receiving yards. Good call, Thor. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, that, and then I'd probably lean some of the unders on the Oregon side, but it's just a weird game because of the game script, like
weird
I mentioned. Yeah. One more game that we're going to handicap, and then we're going to get back into y'all's questions. So any other questions you guys have on today's card, we'll have plenty of time at the end to answer them. So get those in, and we'll get to them in a second. Last game that we have on the schedule to talk about, though, is Wazoo late tonight. This is another 10 p.m. Eastern kick, hosting Texas Tech. Pair of teams here that play way better historically than at home than they do on the road. The spread here, it looks like Wazoo's -1. It's been, sort of in that range. I'm going to check real quick to see if there's been any late movement on it. Yeah, it looks like we got one across the market. There's a 1.5 at FanDuel, and there's one book out there that has it too, but that's the range that we're in. Gene, tonight in Pullman on the Palouse, who do you like in this game between Texas Tech and Washington State?
I like the fans in this game. I think if you came to see people throw the ball all over the place, you came to see passing, you came to see scoring, you came to the right place.
Yeah.
I would not pick either one of these teams, but I love the over. I don't see how this game stays under 70 points. If you're looking at the way in which I think Texas Tech gave up 51 points in a 1 overtime game to Abilene Christian. Portland State scored 30 points on Wazoo.
Yeah.
Like, come on. They're going to be able to score, and then because they can score, the other team's going to score on them because neither defense seems to be that great or seems to be that concerned about defense. So I'll take the over. I think that there is going to be points and yards all over the place. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being one of those games that has like one of those stat lines that people get all like giddy over. Like there was 850 passing yards and 9 touchdowns or 12 touchdowns in the game or something crazy. I just think the over is the play here. If you're trying to do anything, this line's way too close, way too finicky.
Yeah, Gene mentioned we had 100 combined total points in that Wazoo game last week against Portland State. Texas Tech, who also played an FCS team, that game was over 100 as well. Abilene Christian almost upset Texas Tech at the very end in overtime. Abilene goes for 2 after they had scored a touchdown, a match Tech's touchdown, and they called a really stupid play. I was watching that game. I was super excited. Yeah. Maverick McAvoy and Abilene, but that game went way over as well. Tech got shredded through the air. Tech's secondary is absolutely awful. And Froton, this is going to bring us to some more props in this game. So Texas Tech secondary already projected to be bad heading into this season. They had lost their best defensive back to the NFL draft, and then I think one other guy to graduation, and had to replace 3 starters total back there if you include the nickel. It is so projected to be bad, and it's even worse now. First of all, you have the data point of last week when they got shredded by the Maverick McAvoy, who couldn't get on the field in Lubbock over 3 seasons. That's the reason he had to transfer down to Abilene. But on top of that, the best player in Tech secondary, their safety, CJ Baskerville, questionable, listed as questionable with a shoulder injury in this game. And Joey McGuire, so their cornerback one, their new cornerback one, Braylon Lux, he missed last week, and they needed him as they were getting shredded by Maverick McAvoy. Joey McGuire earlier this week said that he believes Lux will return for this game, but that's no guarantee. He missed last week. He has a thigh injury. So we'll have to see on that. We have 2 game time decisions of their 2 most important players in the secondary, a bad secondary, going against a Wazoo team that threw for 1 million yards last week, still runs that air raid. They had coaching continuity. Froton, do you like a side in this game? And then the juicy prop a market that we have in this game, where are your bets going so far in that?
Yeah, you'd be surprised at the QB passing yardage in this game. Very, very modest for Baron Morton. Open to 245.5, up to 250.5. Probably with steam up even a little more. I don't understand how you can throw that on here, considering the 2 teams and their high passing proclivities. I mean, that is 250.5. You have to take again on principle. You have to take that over. I watched every throw that both Mateer and our friend Baron Morton made last week. I wanted to make sure I was dialed in because it's such an important game. And I have to say, Baron Morton is a guy I've been pretty tough on in terms of my evaluation. I love Will Hammond, the incoming true freshman. I think he's an engineering major. He's smart. But with Morton, he looked very comfortable in the system, was making good decisions, didn't have a lot of time to throw. He was zipping it out there. And frankly, the addition of Josh Kelly, I think, really mattered last game. He made some incredible catches. And Yak, just did some great Yak work. Cody Eakin, too. I liked what I saw from this passing attack. And then on the other side for Wazoo, Mateer, he threw for over 300 yards against an FCS, but he only went 11 for 19. There was he made some mistakes that I think he won't be able to get away with again. He's good. He won that job from Eckhouse. I didn't hear great things about Eckhouse. I'm a little concerned based on what I watched and Mateer's accuracy, the way that I don't think he has the same command of the offense that Morton has. And because of that, I am leaning Texas Tech, and I am whole hog on Baron Morton's over. I don't think you can take an under on the passing yardage either because Mateer is up at like 293, almost 300. I think that's an over too, even though I like Texas in the game.
I'm on the over at both quarterbacks. Yeah, Mateer at that number. It was in the high 290s before. It might be right over 300 right now. Either way, I'm going over on that. And then Morton, I agree with your thoughts on Morton. However, you have to go over on Morton in this game. The game script is going to go against them. They have to throw. And again, Wazoo's defense gave up 30 points last week to Portland State. The other thing, the big elephant in the room, I was just getting warmed up with Texas Tech injuries. The biggest one, especially when you think about the props, is Taj Brooks. We're trying to get a sense. I was just looking up on Twitter, see if there was anything new. Before he was listed as questionable, they're saying he's a game time decision. As of now, and I suppose they don't need to say anything because they don't play until late tonight, there has been no new updates today. Taj Brooks is how Texas Tech's offense gets efficiency. He's a broken tackle machine. He handles a metric ton of usage. Last week, he had a really good game, before he suffered that injury. The 2 backup running backs for the RB2 and the RB3 on Texas Tech, they only had 1 carry apiece, while Taj Brooks was handed this really heavy workload, and perhaps unexpectedly, but they got that big it was the shootout game against Abilene, so they needed everything they could about Brooks. But that's my whole point here. If Brooks is out in this game, all the pressure is on Morton, but all the usage will be on Morton too. And Wazoo's defense is forgiving, and I think I like Wazoo in this game. So, Texas Tech, assuming that's right, assuming that Texas Tech isn't winning by double digits here, the game script is going to be in Morton's favor as well. That's an easy over. And then against the horrid Texas Tech secondary that might be missing its 2 best players, in addition, I'm going over on the Mateer passing. They still run the air raid there. They had 6 other offensive start. Mateer's not a returning starter. Of course, Cam Ward's the starting quarterback last year, but there were 6 other returning starters that Wazoo had outside of that. In addition to all that stuff, Texas Tech, one of their top edge rushers, Joseph Adedire, I think. I'll have to get into the pronunciation on that. Anyways, we'll call him Joe. Joe is he's confirmed out for the season. He missed the opener, but they've now confirmed he's out for the season. And then Joe's top backup, Dylan Spencer, on the edge. He was previously lost to a season-ending injury, so the pass rush attack is going to be down as well. Wazoo 8-3-1 at home against the spread since 2021, and Tech. So they're a big home road split team. Wazoo is. They play really well in Pullman, of course, when they leave there. And then Texas Tech, it's the same. Only obviously we're reversed in this game. Tech is between 2019 2023. Tech was 16-13 against the spread at home, 7-15. Against the spread on the road. So I just think this is a really good matchup for Wazoo. They're catching Texas Tech at the right time. If they get Texas Tech, they don't have to play Taj Brooks. And then the defense, in particular, the pass defense is compromised. That goes into what Wazoo wants to do. So I'm going to lay that single point there. All right, let's before we hop it back into the mailbag, Gene, let's get your FCS play of the week.
Yes. I think first off, great thought process from the FCS. Like, go out there, play your games against the FBS teams, put up a good fight, and now come home and put on some really good matchups. And one really good matchup this week, I know everybody's going to be tuned in for, is Incarnate Word at South Dakota State. South Dakota State, the champs, they went down, played well versus Oklahoma State, didn't get it done. Incarnate Word, really like high-powered offense, throwing the ball all over the lot. South Dakota State, one of the best rushing teams in the FCS. I think they were number 2 to North Dakota State last year. And we know what they bring, even without Isaiah Davis. Angel Johnson, he's a beast. We know what Mark Gronowski brings to the table. This is his 4th or 5th year in the program. I think that this line, though, at minus 23.5 for South Dakota State is too big. I know that they have a propensity to blow teams out, but this Incarnate Word team is good. This Incarnate Word team is a team that will pace anybody. They have a really good opportunity to be a representative in Frisco. So I'm going to take Incarnate Word to cover that plus 20 or a plus 23.5. South Dakota State will win, but it won't be by that much.
So we're going to empty the clip. We're about to empty the clip on our player props for the rest of the day, the ones we didn't get to during the show, and then we'll get back into the mailbag. So if you have any other last second questions, put them in the chat there below. Again, everyone, thanks for joining us. Let's jump into the player props that we have not so far. I'm looking over my card right now. I'll toss out a couple, then I'll kick it to Froton. Gene, if you have any, feel free to hop in. A couple right off the top. Trebor Pena, the wide receiver for Syracuse, sort of came out of nowhere. And last week, Kyle McCord is looking his way and manufacturing touches for him. His receptions at 3.5, going over on that. Seems like the targets will be there. One I like even more. I was really surprised that Deion Burke says his over-under for receptions was set at 4.5 against this rancid Houston team. Keep in mind, not only is Deion Burks, the transfer from Purdue, the stated wide receiver one and has been for a while. That was with the Sooners wide receiver core that was at full strength. It is not at full strength. They have multiple injuries there in their receiving core. This thing is Deion Burks and pray for rain. Jackson Arnold's going to be looking his way all day. I'll start off with that. Froton, you want to toss out a couple?
Yeah, you make a great point about Farouk and Nick Anderson being out.
Yeah.
For Oklahoma. I like the 66.5 receiving yards too. Like, I think he catches a couple deep ones and he blows that away. Might even look at a ladder for that. You had mentioned Avery Johnson's rushing yardage, 51.5 earlier. Yes. Give it to me. It's going to be the Avery Johnson show today. I think that's ladder worthy. Maryland, Roman Hemby. Roman Hemby is a receiving back, okay? Antoine Littleton would do the short yardage work last year. You got Colby McDonald, who was actually more explosive running than Hemby was. I just don't think at 65.5 rushing yards, you're going to see Maryland have the heft up front with losing Delmar Glaze, who was far and away the best offensive lineman, a third-round left tackle. Yeah, I know you like Delmar Glaze. So I love that under for Hemby. We're going to go with Yeezy, Kanye Roberts. That's right. 808s and Heartbreak. Appalachian State playing Clemson. 52.5 rushing yards. Please. That has gotten knocked down, I believe, around 48.5. Might even be down 46.5. Dude, that is a 3-man weave in the backfield. You also have Anderson Castle in the sand, who is going to be getting prominent totes. He even was starting to kind of take over Roberts towards the end of week 1. I think that is a smash. I think that's like a best bet. Yeezy. Nathan Carter, running back, Michigan State, lined at 67.5 rushing yards. Shameful. Katron Adams, UMass, my alma mater, coming in, crossing 100 yards in less than 10
Played
carries.
Way better last week. Ran the ball way better. Yeah.
Way better.
Carter's going to get his, he's going to get usage cut into 1,000%.
Absolutely. He's a holdover from the previous regime. In comes Jonathan Smith from Oregon State, brings all his dudes, including bringing in Katron Adams. Great. Nathan Carter was the nominal starter last week. I think that's a 50-50 this week. If he has a brain, it's 50-50. Maybe even you see Katron starting to take over the lead. You can't put 67.5 up there and Nathan Carter the way he played last game. You just can't do it. Against Florida Atlantic? No. They're playing Maryland now. Good luck. Anthony Coheed and Calandria, progressive rock legend. If you like operatic rock, Coheed and Calandria, this is my guy. 30.5 he's listed out for rushing yards. He is the most electric quarterback in the ACC. I stand with Anthony Calandria. I'm here for it. 30.5 rushing yards. He's coming, and he is beating that.
A terrible Wake Forest offense. There's going to be tempo in that game too.
Dude, that game's going over. First off, I like Virginia. I like the over, and I don't like Hank Bachmeier, as everybody here who's ever listened to me knows. He is not staying healthy. He's 22.5 on 2,200 was his season line. Please, just stop. We're going to go with Woody Marks. Dude, Woody Marks.
Oh, that line's way too high.
What is going on here? What is happening with this line?
It's weird.
Last week, he had 51 yards, right, heading into the last play of the game. For some reason, LSU's disgraceful front decided to let him march, just let him go 17 yards in the end zone when they know he was going to run it, and they're just looking to kick a field goal and run the timeout. Like, I don't know what LSU was doing there, but that allowed him to hit 67 or 68. Still, you're going to put him in 96 now? Okay, Marshawn Lloyd is 10 times the back that Woody Marks is last year. He wasn't getting more than 15 carries a game, okay? He wasn't being lined at 96. On principle, you have to take his under. Brendan Sorsby, QB Cincinnati. I watched every single throw he made. I watched every single throw Eli Holstein made because of Cincinnati and Pitt. That game's going to the moon. The moon! You understand me? That Pitt offense, they're humming. This is a whole new deal. They bring in the most prolific FCS coordinator from last year, and it shows.
The Wonderkin.
Dude, it is the
kid's
Wonderkin.
Like 30 years old. Yeah, it's him and Narduzzi, him and the Nard Dog. They need to have like a buddy cop or a mentor cop like type show. Yeah, I don't know what those guys talk about in the office.
Yes,
yeah.
Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. It's all there for you. So I love it. I love the over for Sorsby's only at 225.5. Dude, he looked awesome. They line Sorsby like he's Emory Jones.
We love Sorsby too, Froton.
Love Sorsby.
Yeah, that kid's good.
They're lining him like he's Emory Jones from last year, where he threw for 2,100 yards and he was a disgrace down the stretch. Dude, Sorsby is going to light up this Pittsburgh defense. He's awesome. So I love me some Brandon Sorsby. I will save my Froton's torpedo for later, but that's what we got here for the rest of the props until the big finish.
The last ones that I wanted to clean up, let's see here. We haven't talked at all about I had to prevent myself from going with talking about my other alma mater, Kansas, traveling to Illinois today. Big game for them. Jalen Daniels' passing line is set way too low. I got it at 207.5. Might be up to 210 or right around there, but I would still go over on that. The way that Kansas plays, when they get the huge leads, that's when they run. Look back at any game that they've played that's within, within single digits, whatever, or under 2 possessions, where Daniels gets more than 22 attempts, certainly 25. He goes over that number easily all the time. So last year, obviously, he was injured for most of the season. And then you have some of these isolated ones where they're playing the bad team, and then they start run. But in neutral game scripts, that number, he blows that out of the water. So I would go over on that. And then the other one, Jeremiah Hunter, the Washington receiver against EMU today, feels like a line that was set way too high at 72.5.
He didn't even show up last week.
Yeah, he didn't play. Didn't make
Jackson in Boston. Yeah. Good luck.
I don't. Yeah, and I don't know why the book set that at 72.5, but definitely going under on that. So some other. Gene, did you have any other player props that we haven't hit yet?
Yeah, a couple quarterback props that I like. Drew Aller.
Looked great last week.
I thought he looked fantastic, and then a rainstorm broke out, and then a whole different game was after it. But I really liked the way he looked. Over 221.5 points. I'll take the over on that. Kyron Drone started off shaky last week, but then got it going. I think he's a guy like that stable of guy. By the way, he works with the same quarterback coach as Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward. You can tell all three of them like look similar when they're out there operating. I like Kyron Drones to throw the ball 234.5 yards against Marshall today. I think he goes over that. And then obviously the one no one has talked about it, but this should almost be a given every week. Jackson Dart over 300 and 300.5. Like Jackson Dart's going to throw the ball all over the place because I think that Lane Kiffin just likes playing with people. Like I think he just likes to just what can we chuck and duck? And Jackson Dart is here for it. So those are my three. Smash them. I think you can't miss with those.
I was mad that Lane didn't go for the 100 burger last week.
Right?
He finally called off the Dogs in the fourth quarter, but they were on
sobriety.
pace.
Sobriety's killing him. That's the problem.
Yeah, I wanted him to do the in the Gladiator and then do the thumbs down to his players on the field. Let's go for the 100. Let's just do it. It would be fun. All right, guys, we're going to get back into the for the end of the show here. We have about 10 minutes or so to open that mailbag up one last time. First question, Jay Fritas asks us, this is a good segue. Thanks, Jay. He asks us our thoughts on Penn State covering against Bowling Green today. A good jump off point, Gene, from your point about Alar on the spread there. I got to pull it up quick, but do you have any leans on the side of that one?
I definitely
got 34 in the market, 34.5 at a couple bucks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, big spreads are big for a reason. That's my mantra. I go with it all the time. Big spreads are big for a reason. Bowling Green defensively is good enough to make Penn State have to pass the ball. And I think forcing Penn State to do more passing is only better for Penn State. They can just get lazy and boring and just try to run it. I like when they're more dynamic. Bowling Green may bring that out of them. If they do, I think that game has a great chance. I think that Penn State has a great chance to cover for that game. I think Bowling Green doesn't allow as much, dynamics on offense that's going to make Penn State like panic. Penn State they've seen it all. Like they've seen it all. They have to deal with it in the Big Ten. Bowling Green not going to be a problem. If I had to lean, it's a big spread. If I have to lean, I'm going to lean Penn State, lay those points, and then just hope that they don't call the Dogs off on me in the fourth quarter.
So my system's line on that one is 34.2. So where the line has gone, like I'm right there with it. The next question we got thoughts from Drew Logo. Thoughts on Kansas at Illinois. Froton, I'll let you jump in on this one. You can talk about my alma mater before me. And also if you had any straight thoughts on that last game, Penn State against Bowling Green. Froton, you're muted. We knew we were going to get one. I did go over on the 0.5 mutes for Froton today.
Well, I just want to make sure you guys get your stuff in. I have a tendency to talk a little much. So. Yeah, but everybody's talking about Kansas, Illinois. Everybody, obviously, especially around these parts. Bielema can talk all he wants, but man, 108th in rushing explosiveness, 122nd in power success rate. What's going on with that? Okay, I'm a Luke Altmaier guy, as everybody knows. 23rd in passing success rate last year. Quietly, Illinois was actually a pass-heavy team last season. So that's something to keep in mind. I actually like the Pat Bryant over a little bit since he gets pounded with targets. And with Kansas, something that when we're talking about Jalen Daniels too, I love, like you stated, I really like that over. Keep in mind last year, they were 18th in 20-plus pass yards. Actually, passes of 20 yards or more in terms of gaining them.
18th backup quarterbacks all year.
Was with Jason Mr. Bean, who was running oriented, right? We have a better passer here were Jalen Daniels, because they were top 10 in passing explosiveness last year. And keep in mind, their line, they got beat up pretty bad. 118th in stuff rate, 91st in success rate in terms of rushing last year. So I think we're going to see points. And I like that Jalen Daniels over. Absolutely. And frankly, take a look at Caden Fegan, too. Running back for Illinois. He's going to get all those carries. I think you're going to see more runs than we've traditionally seen from him. Something to kick around.
Yeah, just speaking to the Daniels thing quick. Last week, he only attempted 15 passes because they were playing Lindenwood.
Yep. And didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, low-tier FCS team. So he only threw for 148 yards in that game. I think that's partially informing this thing. First two games of last year, they played Illinois, was one of them. In that game, Daniels goes 21 for 29, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week after that, Nevada, he 21 for 27, 298 yards. Of course, he ends up getting injured right after that, the back injury, going forward, lost the rest of the season. But like you look at the year before in the bowl game against Arkansas, he threw for 554 yards in that game. Texas, a couple weeks before that, 230. I don't know, man. Like in neutral game scripts, you just look through it. When he's over the 22 attempts or so, he goes over every single time. So do you think the game script is going to be more or less neutral? The only way that we lose that one is if Kansas goes into Champaign today and decks Illinois. Yeah, because then it'll be the Devin Neal show after that. But I would go over on that. And I'd lean Kansas. I haven't bet the side on that one, but I would lean Kansas on that. Xavier Jones asks, and guys, we only got about 5 more minutes for questions. We got to go quick. Xavier Jones asks, Darian Mensah passing or rushing over 150 seems low. Froton, you were talking about this with regards to the Tulane Kansas State game before. Thoughts on the Mensah props?
I watched every single Darian Mensah throw from last game. I was impressed. I wanted every reason to take the Darian Mensah under 150 passing yards because we had a 3-way QB battle heading in. And it's like, all right, well, if he stinks against Kansas State, what's going to stop Kai Horton from coming in? Nothing, essentially. So, I was concerned about that. But man, he made some nice throws. He was real good. He was really good. And I didn't expect him to be. And I was like, ooh. That took me off of that under 150, and especially with script likely being in a passing sort of a situation, I am staying away from that. As much as I wanted the under 150 and a half, I simply could not bring myself to do it. But I do have a best bet that I will put for the Froton's Torpedo segment later about that game.
Yeah, we'll get there in 5 minutes. Just a couple more questions. The next one, XJMBX5 asks us, is taking Pittsburgh to win outright worth it? This is interesting. This line here, it opened around a field goal. It's down to Cincinnati -2 hosting Pittsburgh today. I was looking up my line. I actually have a line on that game of Cincinnati -4.5. Gene, first, you thoughts on that one, and then we'll kick it to Froton because I know you looked into the Pittsburgh offensive system this week.
Yes, I have.
Gene, do you have any lean on that game or any thoughts?
Yeah, I would just tell anyone, because I'm not playing in this game, but I would just tell anyone just to bet. One of my betting things is that when a line is that low, if you like the underdog, then take the underdog outright. Like it's always the way to go. If you like the line, it's that low, take the underdog outright. Get a little bit of juice for your squeeze. You guys can take it away from there.
You mentioned Froton and I, a look behind the curtain. We were actually talking last night about that new Pittsburgh offensive system because I thought that Pittsburgh offense was going to be absolutely trash. And then Eli Holstein, the former Alabama quarterback, the transfer to Pittsburgh, he looked really good in that. He won the starting job. That was a little bit of an upset to some people. But look, Froton, talk quick about that and then how that informs your handicap of this game and what side you would be on.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched a lot of it. And as we mentioned, new offensive coordinator, Cade Bell, Kerwin Bell's son, again, 30 years old. Last year, 37.5 points, 504 total yards per game. He comes in and, this is a different Pittsburgh team. That being said, Holstein, not mobile. I'd seen him at the Elite 11 a few years ago, and he had an up and down sort of performance. But, dude, if you can let him sit back there and just dissect, the kid's got a good, strong arm. He's not particularly mobile, but he has that true, pro style sort of a system. And his receivers, Kanata Monkfield coming over, former Akron transfer, was the lead guy. Looked good in that game, but gosh,
I always like Monkfield. His separation rate is super high every year.
Yep, case of the mumps. We all got him every once in a while, but He's clearly like that number one. But dude, Kenny Johnson, sophomore, he made a phenomenal downfield catch that was really tough tracking, right on the sideline, had to sort of look over it and adjust, like extremely high degree of difficulty. He looked awesome. But God, there's a guy I added in all of my dynasty leagues and everywhere he was available because he came in on the second team. But as soon as he came in, he was the guy. I think he ends up taking the starting spot within the next couple of weeks. And he has an unbelievable name. Sincere Lee. Sincerely. Sincere Lee is unbelievable. Okay.
His mother did that on purpose.
Sincerely.
100% Sincere Lee. 100%. And it worked out because this guy's unbelievable. He will be that starting Y sooner rather than later. He looked incredible in that role. So I love me some Sincere Lee in college fantasy football. And I like I think this is, I wouldn't even worry about which team wins.
It's an over game.
The over. Yeah. This is going over. Watch. These teams are going to light it up.
Froton, Karen Shetty asked us on that
My
point.
homie.
You were talking about Brandon Sorsby before, and obviously vis-a-vis this game. The passing attempts for Sorsby at the sportsbooks right now, 30.5. Over or under on that? Any thoughts on that?
I think it's pretty close. Whenever you're talking about passing attempts, flow comes into it and script as opposed to what they want to do. I think this is just simply that with the over-script where I think Pittsburgh's going to be scoring, you're going to have to keep pace. I lean over on that, but I think the 225 is just a layup.
Yeah.
Both of them. Layup.
Last one here. Well, BS says, can Mississippi State cover against Arizona? We have a line on that game of Arizona State, excuse me. Arizona State favored by 5.5 today in Tempe. Looks like that's up for 4.5. Just really quick thoughts. Gene, do you have any thoughts on that one? Lean?
Yeah, I think Mississippi State can cover. But I would lean Arizona State in this one. I think that they have, they have the ability to move the ball better. I think that they move the ball better. I think their defense is a little but I don't think that Mississippi State's offense is like something phenomenal. So I would lean offense in this. And if I'm going to lean offense, I'll probably lean Arizona State, but it would be a close one. I don't know if I would throw money on it, but if you ask me to lean, I'd lean Arizona State.
Froton, my system actually has Mississippi State -1 in this game. So I'm showing a little bit of a discrepancy there. Did you have any leans on this game?
Hard Mississippi State. Hard. I think that Arizona State was a little bit over their head against Wyoming last game, and I think this has kind of steamed them up to be in a place where they're probably not exactly ready to be, in my opinion. And I think that because, you had a Wyoming team breaking in a new QB, Harrison Whaley's out, there's a lot of factors against them in that game. I think you look at Mississippi State here and from a talent standpoint, much, much more talented. I like Blake Shapen, veteran QB, and obviously Jeff Lebby's system. I just think Lebby is a genius, a guy that I really respect from an offensive coordinator perspective. And having an SEC defense, I think it's a wake-up call situation for Arizona State. I am on Mississippi State.
So you think it's for Arizona State when the levees broke today, Froton?
Oh, thank you, Thor. Bless your sweetheart for that pun.
Blake Shapen, the props, I don't think have been set high enough on the Mississippi State side for their passing game because Lebby he throws all the time. Some of these lines are indicative of last year's offensive system. Shapen at 221, 225, somewhere in there over on that. And they had a couple wide receivers as well.
And Mosley as well.
Mosley, yeah.
I have a hard time. Mosley had a good game last game, but, we have those week one pop wide receivers. I have a hard time wanting to really invest because they spread it around a little bit too. And Akiari was out as well. Kevin Coleman was excellent. I'm a little nervous about taking Mosley. I'm gonna lay off of that. I think that the value is on Shapen's over. I think that's just simply happening. 225, it's just too low.
We're going to finish out today, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us. Do our go round robin with our best bets. I'll kick us off with my hammer of the day. I mentioned it. I don't understand the line movement of Wazoo and Texas Tech and why that's come down a half point. I would bet Wazoo certainly up to 4. My system's line on that is Wazoo minus 4.1 if both teams were at full strength. Texas Tech decidedly is not at full strength. Again, Wazoo's a great team at home. Tech, the last 5 years or so, has struggled leaving Lubbock. This feels like a great matchup for Wazoo and a spot to pick off Texas Tech when they're not 100%. And even at 100%, Texas Tech does not appear to be the team that some wanted them to be. If Brooks is out in particular, I think Texas Tech is in real trouble. They're compromised on defense going up against that air raid. I think Matera has a big game. Coach Gene Clemons, your Coach's Corner pick of the day.
Coach's Corner is on this Notre Dame game. I'm looking at them, and I know everybody was so impressed. I think, Thor, you talked about how impressed you were with the new look offensive line, with all of those newbies going in. I mean, and playing against
super impressive.
Yeah,
in College Station. Yeah,
it's great. It's fantastic. However, Northern Illinois returns 18 starters off this team from last year, and they surprisingly will strike the band up at any point in time because Ontario Brown is one of the most explosive running backs in college football that nobody talks about. I'm telling you, 28 points. When was the last time you saw Notre Dame just blowing people out all willy-nilly? I'm not sold on Riley Leonard yet. I'm not sold that they can just go and run roughshod over somebody. I need to see it. I am from St. Louis. This is the show me state. I am taking those 28 points with Northern Illinois. You can put it on the board.
Yes. I have a bunch of Notre Dame friends. I'm not going to bring up some of the ghosts of Marcus Freeman past vis-a-vis these G5 teams coming in and with these big threats. So yeah, exactly. So I mean, something to look for there. And yeah, I mean, even if they're getting the blowout there, are they really is Marcus Freeman just gonna pour it on? I'm not sure about that. Froton, your torpedo for the day.
Yeah, and it goes back to Kansas State and Tulane. Dante Cephas, former Kent State wide receiver, former Penn State wide receiver. I actually wanted to take his under. I pounded the hell out of his under in the bowl game, and because of that, I swear to God, James Franklin knew, and he refused to play Dante Cephas. He got in the doghouse, was supposed to be some special receiver for Penn State, was going to cure all their outside ills last season. That didn't happen at all. Now he's over there, at Tulane. Well, I'm sorry, my friend there, Kansas State, playing Tulane, Dante Cephas, last game. He played exactly 12 reps. He got 2 targets. One of them was a horrific drop. The other was nowhere even near him downfield. I cannot imagine that after being a secondary receiver, he wasn't even a starter, was just worked in a gimme game that had nothing at stake, and he goes and drops the very first pass that he sees and then is nowhere near the next one. Why would you continue to throw the ball to Dante Cephas when you have actual talent on the other side? There's no way he's cracking this lineup. Maybe he Kyle Fords us with 7 snaps and he catches a deep one. It's going to be a one-off. If he doesn't, Dante Cephas started at 27.5, still out there at 24.5. I even saw it in the chat, under his receiving yardage.
And with that, we've run out of time. For my co-host, the prop king, Eric Froton, and our resident coach, Gene Clemons, I'm Thor Nystrom. Enjoy the games today. Let's go cash some tickets.